Welcome to DotLife, Dorchester's hyperlocal podcast with news, content, and analysis. We are talking about several different topics today, but we're going to start here with Bill Forry, Dorchester Reporter. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Good to have you here.
It's a pleasure. I heard a lot about you.
So, how's your weekend?
The weekend was wonderful. We had a great family time, and it's been like a few days now, so I got to recreate it in my head. I think we just kind of hung out. You know, it was a Lower Mills weekend. We spent some time doing like yard work, cleanup, and you know the neighbors probably were about to start protesting my lawn. So.
Don't tell me you have a leaf blower.
I do, but I don't need a leaf blower right now. I just need that lawnmower and the hedge clippers and everything else, and long sleeves because we have poison ivy in the hedges.
Oh, no.
And it gets me every year.
Oh, I've never had it. My mom gets it terribly.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't recommend it. It's not a pleasant experience, and it's very contagious.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Anyways, it went fine. Everybody got out unscathed. And how about your weekend?
I was back home in the Buffalo area. My grandparents celebrated 70 years anniversary. So,
wow.
Yeah, kind of wild.
Impressive.
Yeah.
How was the party?
It was great. It was on a lake. A lot of people I didn't know. So it was fun. And then they're both turning 90 this year too. So it was a big thing.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back. Do you have any peas left in your garden?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about peas. I'm very mad that I'm competing with wildlife and I'm losing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, get down to the farmer's market Friday afternoon.
Yeah, right? I will do that at Greater Ashmont. I might also check out a couple of new restaurants.
I was going to say, that might be on the list too. We have two front page stories on new ventures, one of which is just open on Wednesday. There was a soft opening for a couple of days, but it's the first retail space that's open in the Dot Block complex on Dorchester Avenue. And it's called the Dot Diner and More. Dot Block Diner and More.
Okay.
And it's a project started by Bernie Goodman, who people in Savin Hill especially will know, in South Boston. Started McKenna's Cafe back in the day.
Savin Hill Ave?
Savin Hill Ave.
Okay.
And he has been, he started that project. He no longer is involved in McKenna's, although his daughter works there. Bernie has been living in Florida. He grew up in Southie, and he's a longtime Savin Hill guy and merchant, and has been working for the last couple of years to get this diner open.
I love a good diner.
I think you're really going to enjoy this place,
Yeah.
Erin. I think I know your taste a little bit now. There's a lot of Dot gas tank ephemera in the decor, along with a lot of Hollywood film posters, because his brother, Bernie's brother, Brian, is an actor. And
really,
people will recognize him from different films as well as television series.
Brian Goodman, is that the name?
Brian Goodman. Look him up on IMDb.
You're going to make me Google live.
I know. He's in a surprising number of film going back to the 1990s. The first credit I saw on his list is one that I saw way back in the day, a Donnie Wahlberg production called Southie, which was, maybe not the most auspicious start to a career, but hey, he started somewhere, and he's been doing very well, including being in some of the one of the Fast and Furious movies.
Catch Me If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can. He played apparently the hotel manager in Catch Me If You Can. And he's been in a TV adaptation of Fatal Attraction most recently on a TV series. But he also created his own film or directed and wrote his own film about his life growing up in Southie, sort of, on the wrong side of the tracks. It's almost like the Southie's version of The Town, actually.
Yeah,
like
nice.
Armored car bank robberies going on and stuff. Huge poster of that film in the lobby of, or in the dining room actually, of the Dot Block Diner. But enough about Brian, because he's had
we'll have him on for another segment.
He's had plenty of publicity, and will. His brother Bernie and his team have created this really cool space, and it's only about 45 seats, I think.
Oh, that's.
So it's cozy,
intimate, yeah.
And so is McKenna's, but it works, and it's a popular breakfast and lunch spot, obviously, and I think this will be too. Dot Block, remember, opened, the residences there opened in 2023 in the summer, a couple of years ago now, and we're just now getting our first retail on the ground level. It's been a long time. We've been wondering.
Why? Do you know?
I think part of it was negotiations over rent and costs and the build-outs. But there are now 3 tenants, either open, like the diner is now, or they're going to open in the next year or so.
Okay. I heard Chilicates is opening a location there. That's cool.
Chilicates is opening a location in Dorchester. And for folks who don't know it, it's they have a couple locations. There's one in Jamaica Plain.
They've got like 15 now. They have exploded, but they started in JP in like 2017 maybe, and then suddenly they were everywhere.
So they're finally coming our way.
Tacos and such. Yeah.
It's going to be a cantina.
Yeah.
Is the branding around it. So they'll
Wait, does that mean alcohol?
It does. They have a full liquor license that they just secured in the last month. So they're one of several that received liquor licenses in the latest round, including Milkweed on Morrissey, which they're not active with it yet, but they will be soon.
Okay.
And then the other one is Sweet Teas, which is a bakery, which is owned by Teresa Maynard and her family. They've been making and catering events for 4 or 5 years now since she launched the business, and this is her first bricks and mortar on Dorchester Ave. So the 3 tenants in the ground level.
And those 2 are not open yet?
They're not open yet. They're still doing the build out there.
Okay.
And I think actually Chilicantes is a little further behind Sweet Teas. But Dot Block Diner open for business on Wednesday. I stopped in there today with my daughter briefly. We didn't have a chance to sit down and eat, but the space is amazing. Bernie's a really friendly guy who gives a quick tour, and the decor is really interesting. It's kind of got an industrial feel.
Okay.
It's kind of a long space rather than a wide space. And there are some nice nooks and crannies there for seating, a little bit more private spaces in towards the back. And as I mentioned, this Hollywood decor, which is pretty fun and has a lot of local tie-ins, some beautiful woodwork and painted woodwork with the rainbow swash gas tank featured in several spots. And just a really nice welcoming space. So
who's a big McKenna's fan? Is friend of the pod, Bill Walczak. So I bet we'll see him at the Dot House.
No doubt. And I think you're going to see tons of people. We had a lot of initial, like a crush of comment and feedback right away. Whenever we post something about any restaurant opening, it's like goes viral. But they have an interesting breakfast and lunch menu, which is kind of extensive, actually, as you might expect for a diner, and a heavy waffle emphasis on the breakfast side.
Waffle.
So I think they're trying to fill a niche there. I don't know a lot of like waffle spots.
Is Belgian waffles like the thick waffles?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's
a variety of waffles.
After sushi, maybe they can do sushi too, and then we'll have a rounded.
I'll connect you with Bernie. He's I think looking for ideas.
Okay,
but go check it out. It's open for breakfast and lunch right now. And I found a spot, by the way, if you're driving there, I found a spot right on Dorchester Ave, right in front of the place. So Don't get scared off. Sometimes Freeport Street, Dorchester Ave can be a scary place for traffic, and I get that. Pick your times, but it's going to be, I think, a hit.
Well, if you don't want to go there, there's other options.
We do have another new pop-up. This is a cafe in Upham's Corner on Dudley Street, which Upham's Corner doesn't really have anything like this, so it's very cool that they're doing it. It's called Cafe Blue, and it's inside Dahlia's Garden, which is a florist shop in Upham's Corner, right on Dudley Street. Just as if you're going like into Roxbury before you get to the bridge at Upham's Corner Station, it's right on that block.
Okay.
And it's a mother-daughter team who've started it. It's actually the woman who runs Dahlia's Garden is hosting them. So it's a partnership between the existing garden florist shop and this mother-daughter team. Willel Daniel and her daughter, I'm always going to zone on her first name.
Angelica?
Angelica.
Daniel, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's Seth Daniel's daughter and wife. And
so she has the force too. Wow.
Yeah, the force is strong with this group. They've just started in the last couple of weeks. So the concept here is pop-up cafe. They have Friday and Saturday hours only right now, but they're thinking they might grow that beyond. They'll see how it goes. My wife Linda and I stopped in again. We dragged our daughter Madeline along with us, and we had a great test run with them a couple weekends ago.
Madeline's hair looks on point in this photo, by the way.
She just got it braided. She's very proud of it, and you can't tell from the photo because now she has the look on her face like, I just got my hair done. She looks good. She does.
She does look good.
So she had a lemonade. They serve teas and lattes, and they also do obviously coffee. And the cool thing about the coffee is, and Willella and her family are from Haiti originally, and this is Haitian coffee beans that they've sourced through a vendor, and they did an extensive national search for this bean. I know that because Seth has told me about it, and they found a vendor who's this is imported bean from Haiti. And that's pretty cool. They've incorporated the Haitian themes into the menu and into the decor of the place. And have you been to Dahlia's Garden, the flower shop?
No.
It's not very big, but it's very very cute, very well appointed, and she's a terrific florist. She's done some family events that we've done, including some proms recently. She did beautiful boutonnieres and corsages for our son's events, and she's just a lovely person and a very talented florist. And she had always wanted to have a coffee spot as part of her business. And Willel and Angelica brought this idea to her, and it just works well. So I'd encourage people to check it out. It's open this weekend. It's Fridays and Saturdays, and their plan is to continue that through the summer.
Okay.
And see what the market's
like.
like.
And it has an actual mini VW bus in there? Is that right?
There's a replica VW bus that's been painted, and sort of the Daniels have done their magic to this item, which they secured. And I understand there was some difficulty getting it through the door of Dahlia's Garden, but they succeeded. They've painted it, and it's intended to be reminiscent of a top, which in Haiti is like the public transit system. It's kind of a bus you hop on and hop off of, and they're very colorful and
Seth probably had one in his attic.
Yeah, I don't know how big this man's attic is, but between the basement and the attic, he's got
the
stuff.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe thing where you just go into another dimension.
Yeah, it's a very cute spot, and highly recommend.
Very cool. Another development, entertainment-focused development that's happening. I think this is new this week.
Russell Auditorium.
Yep,
it's on Talbot Ave. People may know it as it's a function hall and a.
I got my COVID vax there.
Oh yeah, I got one of mine there too.
Yeah.
Codman was using it as a satellite. You're right. Many people have been there over the years for family events and political events, all sorts of functions. It's also known as the Carver Den because that's the name of the lodge that owns the building and runs it. And it's been there for many years, I think back into the 1960s.
Okay.
In one ownership or another. And the current group, the current membership of the Carver Lodge have applied for an entertainment license and something that would allow them to have events there.
Which they already do, but they use the one-time
They have to get
right
one-day licenses. Yeah. So this would be an entertainment license for, I think, up to 800 people for big events and weddings, et cetera. So that's going before the licensing board. I think they may have already had one hearing. I think it's still up for discussion. And there is some resistance from some neighbors who are worried because there's just been a major liquor license and entertainment license granted to El Punta, which is a new restaurant,
just down the street,
function hall at the corner of Talbot and Blue.
Yeah.
So not too far away. But Russell Auditorium's been there a long time, and as you mentioned, already have events and have a history of running events. So I suspect they'll be successful here.
Now, is there a reno planned, or is it just to keep this existing building able to host?
I don't believe there's a major renovation planned at this point. No, this is just to kind of allow for more events to happen in the neighborhood.
Okay, very cool. Well, we'll keep our eyes on whether or not that happens. We have also got some news from not Dorchester, Seaport, but involves a storied Dorchester influencer, Mr. Tom Menino.
Pretty big influencer citywide in his career. Yeah, we went to this event on Saturday, Erin. That's one of the things I was trying to remember when you asked me at the beginning of the show. It was an event-packed week. But the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center, which Tom Menino was instrumental and really, credited with bringing to Boston, and back in the 1990s when he was.
Was there just Heinz back then?
It was just the Heinz, and there were other smaller convention centers. The Bayside Expo Center was one of them, obviously, but that was privately held. The public one was strictly the Heinz, and obviously that still exists, but it has a smaller capacity. The BCEC, which is now the Thomas M. Menino Exhibition Center, is the major one. And on Saturday, there was about 1,000 people who gathered in the lobby of the building for the renaming and a unveiling of the new signage in front of the building. Mayor Wu was essentially the keynote speaker, along with the Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, and other dignitaries, Congressman Lynch, people like Chairman of Ways and Means, Erin, who worked for Tom Menino, and a lot of Team Menino people from his era, many of whom, of course, are still active in city and state politics and have become major figures in their own right, like Mayor Wu. And they spoke about how Tom Menino really led the charge to get this facility sited, built, funded, and had to withstand a lot of criticism for doing so. And I think it was interesting to note how often during the ceremony it came up about the naysayers and the skeptics and his political opponents and media foes too, or at least critics, who were really kind of nonstop questioning the wisdom of building this facility, quarreling with the money, the financial investment, but whether or not it was a good idea to build a facility which really is and was intended to be world class and to put Boston on a different stage. Menino, to his credit, and they played the interview clips at this event to kind of reinforce this, was like, no, you gotta have the vision to see this, not only for the convention center but for that neighborhood that's developed around it, the Seaport District, which does have its critics in terms of its maybe its density or exactly, its streetscapes or the urban design elements, not all of which have anything to do with Tom Menino's decision making, but some of it does. But you can't really quarrel with the fact that this is a huge new neighborhood of the city that's been a boom.
And it has its promoters. Some people love it.
I think so. Yeah, there's plenty of people who have settled there, and that's their neighborhood. There's a beautiful park there, by the way, that does have a Dorchester connection, Martin's Park, which is dedicated to Martin Richard, and his family built a beautiful park there on the waterfront, not far from what's now the Menino Center. But I was struck by how often this theme came up of having the vision and having the political capital and the will to use it to build a major project like that.
What does that remind you of?
It reminds me a lot about White Stadium.
Well, as you know, our interview segment today for this episode is all about White Stadium. So we'll dig into that much deeper.
That was completely
accidental. Thank you for the segue.
That was not a setup. But it was really cool to be in the room with all these folks who worked for Tom Menino. It was nice to hear his voice again. They would play the interviews and to see him again. And his daughter, Susan Menino Fenton, spoke eloquently and passionately at the end of the ceremony about her dad's memory and how much they miss him. And we all do. And honestly, we didn't always see eye to eye. And certainly there were flare-ups during his 20-plus years where the reporter and Tom Menino, we'd have our differences, or he didn't like something we wrote or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so there were bumps in the road. But, looking back, he was just a faithful steward of the public's trust and was really well-intentioned and meaning in how he delivered for the city. And he really was a landmark and a historic mayor for Boston. So it was nice to see him get his just rewards and for his family to be able to, including his grandkids who are gotten quite big, to see them again. It was really a nice event for the city.
I missed the Menino Association administration. I was not here for that, but I've seen his presence many, many times, and the folks that I know who didn't live here during that hold him in pretty high regard.
He died in 2015, and it doesn't feel like it's been that long. It's been 10 years, but I was reading back at our coverage when he did pass, and it's funny, like we wrote lots and lots of articles that week about his legacy, and we never mentioned the BCEC in our coverage because, we had so much else to write about. So this building does serve as a monument to him, but it really encapsulates so much more that he accomplished in his career. So salute to him.
I want that to be the struggle when I pass too. There's so much that I did that they can't fit it all in.
Exactly. We'll have to have the whole special edition.
That's right. We also have actually pretty recently broken news. I think this broke today, which is Wednesday that we're recording, about another larger-than-life political figure who is former President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. will be given a Lifetime Achievement Award.
He's coming to Dorchester in October.
Last time he came to Dorchester, he caused a lot of traffic.
Well, we need a few months. We need a few months warning to let everyone know. Former President Biden will be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award from the EMK Institute, the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate. It's going to happen October 26th. It's a Sunday at the EMK Center, obviously on Columbia Point. He will be joined at the event by his former Secretary of Labor, Martin J. Walsh, who will also be receiving an award from the EMK for his career in public service. There'll be other people honored at the event as well, but President Biden's it'll be a big deal, and that's their annual dinner in October. So that's what's coming up.
Nice. I can't think of someone who deserves it more. Whether or not you agreed with his politics or his administration, the man devoted his entire life to public service.
He's the second major national political figure to get an award on Columbia Point this year. Do you know who the other one was? He was a Republican. Profile and Courage Award. Mike Pence. Mike Pence was at the JFK Library for, I think it was in May, for their May dinner, receiving the Profile and Courage Award. So
moving along.
Yeah. So we get the other end of the spectrum, perhaps, and coming up. So yeah, mark your calendars for that. And congrats to Secretary Walsh, our neighbor, who will also be honored that day with his former boss.
Very cool. We're going to end on a slightly less upbeat note. Counselor Fitzgerald, friend of the pod, has put forward a plan around the mass and Cass situation, and that involves a regional approach to dealing with the drug use epidemic and the unhoused people.
Right.
What you guys wrote about it? You covered it this week.
Yeah, Chris Lovett wrote a very in-depth piece this week for us about the mass and Cass issue and where things kind of stand at the moment, which I'd have to say, just in the last couple of months, it's really crystallized again as a crisis issue for the city. The public health commissioner, who you've also had on the pod, Dr. Ojikutu, acknowledged in the last couple of weeks that the drug use epidemic, really the approach to it, has been a failure, and that's been well documented and kind of moved around.
Can you do me a favor, as someone who moved here right as the bridge was closing, can you set the picture of what it was like when the bridge was open? Was it not?
It wasn't as concentrated in the Mass Cass area. So because the Long Island shelter, which was a place that folks could be temporarily housed or sleep overnight and seek services, when that was open on Long Island, it was a pretty efficient way for folks to be treated and also cared for.
It wasn't the most easy to get to, even with the bridge, right?
You had to take a bus, and people would assemble at various points in the city, but especially in the Boston Medical Center area, to get on buses and go there in the evenings to spend the night there. But it was that's what made a difference. When that bridge was closed and ultimately demolished for structural reasons, this is under Marty Walsh's first term, I believe, it was very disruptive to the recovery programming in the city and to the homeless situation. So that was a triggering event. And as you mentioned, it was 10 years ago this summer when that happened. And the resulting sort of number of years has seen that concentration of people encamped often in the area around Atkinson Street for a period. That was demolished and tents were cleared, et cetera, now 2 years ago. But the problem persists, obviously. And I will note, and Dr. Ojikutu of the BPHC has noted too, fortunately we have seen a decline, according to city statistics, in opioid-related deaths in 2024. They were down significantly, 38%.
Across the country, actually. The
Yeah.
Times had a story this week about that. Meth has become the new problem drug. Not that it wasn't a problem before, but
Right.
deaths from meth are more common than opioids because of drugs like Narcan being able to help treat that.
And in Boston, and the other interesting stat that came out this year about opioid deaths in recent years is that the zip code in Boston that had the highest number of fatalities was 02124 in Dorchester. It had 71 deaths in I believe it was between 2021 and 2023. And, that may be surprising to people, but we clearly have across the city and in our own neighborhood a drug abuse and opioid especially related death issue. Cobbin Square Health Center, we wrote about that this week as well. Seth did. They're proposing to put a Narcan vending machine on their campus because that problem is not, obviously we all know this, it's not just contained to Mass and Cass.
Right.
It tends to be a magnet though. And what Councilor Fitzgerald is proposing, he's asked for a hearing of the City Council. He wants to create a regional approach to this matter, to bring other cities and towns in, kind of a mutual aid situation, the way we might have for a fire emergency.
Well, there's a statement in here in your article, the paper's article. I know you didn't write this one.
Right.
I can't remember who said it, but I think it was John who said, we all know that many of these people are not from Boston. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So why are they there?
Sometimes they're actually transported there by other municipalities because they know that they can get services here in Boston. And that's John Fitzgerald's point. It's also the point of Representative John Moran, who represents that part of the city, the South End neighborhood, but he also has parts of Dorchester. They've put together a working group along with the Newmarket Square Association, other stakeholders in that community have been so hard hit for years now. And there's obviously been other proposals, too, from people like Josh Kraft, who's obviously running for office. Steve Tompkins, the sheriff in Suffolk County, has proposed using some of his jail facility to help with the situation. But what John Fitzgerald in particular is saying is, look, whether it's a fund or if it's just like a mutual aid agreement that we're not just going to sort of warehouse and really dump people into Boston to try to broom that issue into our city. Yeah, he wants that dealt with at that level, and I think he is lining up some allies. John Moran obviously is a state lawmaker. It's an uphill climb, and this is just the beginning because he's only asked for a hearing. He hasn't really put together a comprehensive hearing proposal. It's like, let's just discuss this idea. Bring in the state officials who we need as partners to get the resources, especially, money's part of it, but especially to get their buy-in.
Well, and I also think that money, yes, is step one, but part of the problem is there's nowhere to take them, that the community around them won't have outrage for potentially reasonable reasons. But so even if you have the money, if you can't build a facility or you can't put people somewhere for treatment,
no doubt. That's come up. And Chris Lovett in this article today does a good job of documenting that. There have been proposals, for example, to reuse the Shattuck Hospital and Jamaica Plain Roxbury line. That's been really controversial. It's still an open question what's going to happen with the Shattuck. We understand there may be some movement on that soon. It's something we're working on.
It's a BMC property now, right?
BMC has a role with that. Yes, definitely. But it's ultimately a state decision because it is state owned, and that's a Governor Healy issue. Yeah. So there's more to come on this, but check out this article Chris Lovett did, as comprehensive of a job as you can do in one story to try to outline the history here, but also what could be the next steps.
And we're going to have more about this.
For sure.
Yeah.
Chris would be a great guest to have on, actually, to talk about this.
Yeah, let's do it. What else? What's coming up next week?
Well, this weekend we have the Jazz Festival that's at Marihanna Park. I know Fred Hammond, you had him on last.
Fred Woodard, yeah.
Fred Woodard, sorry. That there's going to be, I think, an afternoon of jazz at Marihanna Park, so check that out.
His band, man, they're cool.
They're very cool. Yeah. Family. It's a family affair.
Mostly family, yeah.
I can kind of understand and vibe with that. But yeah, we have that. We have a lot of new businesses to talk about next week too on Blue Hill Avenue. Next week we're going to really be focusing on some interesting startup businesses, including a pretty cool vintage boutique that's now open on Blue Hill Avenue.
Oh, nice.
So I think you'll dig it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk to you then.
See you then.
DotLife is sponsored in part by the Dorchester Reporter, Dorchester's own community newspaper and online home for all things Dorchester at dotnews.com. The Reporter, owned and operated by the Forry family, has been laser focused on Dorchester and the surrounding neighborhoods of Boston since 1983. That longevity and experience shows in its award-winning coverage every week. The Reporter is our go-to source for authentic stories about the people, places, and events that matter most to our daily lives. We are proud to partner with The Reporter and Dot News. And you can support the important journalism provided by The Reporter. Just go to dotnews.com to subscribe today. It's the best deal in town and helps keep our local community journalism alive and well. Welcome back to DotLife. We are having a great conversation today about White Stadium, which is obviously on the border of several neighborhoods, but in Franklin Park, but Dorchester is one of the impacted neighborhoods. I'm excited to introduce Mike Omenazu, who is the Director of Community Engagement with Legacy Football Club. Hey, Mike.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Really excited to chat with you today. You are kind of a Dorchester guy, but you don't really claim Dorchester.
I proudly claim Dorchester, especially as is the location of my address on my taxes.
Okay.
And also proudly claim Roxbury, as that's where I go to the Y, and that is my neighborhood branch at the library. So, in this debate over whether you consider Grove Hall, Roxbury, or Dorchester, I would say Roxbury more so for me.
So you're on the line.
Exactly.
We'll take half of you.
Yeah.
So tell me what you do as Director of Community Engagement at Legacy Football Club. What does that role entail?
Yeah, that role entails me getting to manifest my dreams and previous wishes as a community resident who participated in community meetings and voiced his opinion into now a more formal capacity on behalf of the team, getting to advocate for the community by delivering on specific commitments that we made as concessions that came out of this 2-year process of working to hear from residents around White Stadium. So we heard a pretty passionate plea for protecting access to the park and actually increasing it, as well as the number of different investments and considerations on how that would impact the communities around it, as I'm a neighbor. And my job now is to make that a reality and to actually bring to life what we said and promised to the community.
There was a lot of voices that you guys heard during that process.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was a lot of work for you. Did you work for the team when this initial project came into fruition, or did you join later on?
So I actually joined after participating both initially as a community resident.
Okay.
Prior to joining in a formal capacity with the team about a year or so ago.
Okay.
And obviously this process has been going on for 2 years, specifically with the Legacy Football Club. And then as we know, the broader historical context, 40 plus years. So, you know, I came in halfway in between that last 2 years of the team and the city working in partnership to amplify the voices of community residents all across the city, and then specifically those in the neighborhoods around White Stadium, and transition from literally just signing up for those community meetings and showing up on a Zoom to now translating that into a formal capacity and role on behalf of the team.
I want to take a step back actually and talk about how this project started. When I was doing some reading, it sounded like the football club identified White Stadium as where they wanted to be and came to the city with that idea. It wasn't really a bidding process or a lot of different sites in consideration. What was it about White Stadium that drew Legacy to that location, and what did that process look like?
Yeah, I think you correctly noted the intentional investment in White Stadium for a number of reasons, which I'm happy to get into, as well as I will actually say deep consideration of a number of different alternatives, especially recognizing that historical context, right? Both of this conversation around the 40 years of renovating White Stadium, but also the iterations of the National Women's Soccer League and the team in Boston. Mm-hmm. So the iterations that have played in other venues before, like Nickerson Field or Harvard Stadium, and taking that all in consideration, as well as the different criteria of where the league stands now in this explosive moment of interest, and taking all of those different factors, broadcasting, all of those things align very well with White Stadium and the intentional investment into the city and the impact that we could have both in those 20 game days as well as the entire 365 for the entirety of the year as we aim to revitalize not just White Stadium, but how fans and communities think about the impact of sports teams.
Yeah. So you said there were some other stadiums under consideration, but White Stadium in particular, just the location, the proximity to the city, the fact that it was in a neighborhood that you thought would draw interest. Is that what other considerations came into White Stadium?
Yeah, namely its role as a treasured asset within the community, as an emerald and crown jewel and the emerald necklace. Like that was really critical, as we know a number of community members have wanted White Stadium to be renovated for years. It's a conversation that has preceded the team.
Definitely.
And in multiple administrations and multiple neighbors who've come in and out have wanted to see White Stadium renovated. So as you correctly mentioned, so many different factors. It really distinguished it as such a great alignment with our goal, again, of thinking about our relationship with the city and with communities, right? We wanted to think about, yes, we have the 20 game days, and also what can community residents do with the White Stadium for the rest of the year and all 365 days, and particularly this intentional investment around Boston Public School students and Boston Public School athletes and their ability to share this global stage and this modern state-of-the-art facility with the pro sports team and their fellow community members and neighbors.
Is high school engagement part of the Legacy Football Club's mission?
Absolutely. It's both personal, as I live pretty close to Boston Latin Academy, and again, in pretty close proximity to walking proximity to White Stadium, as well as have family friends who actively play athletics for Boston Public Schools, BLA in particular, football, basketball, baseball, a number of different sports. So it's personal, and seeing them be able to access the resources, they've clamored for this, and they've heard from a number of coaches who talk about the impact that will have in their sense of self and their sense of achievement and what they can actually do, as well as a number of the different stories from so many of the previous athletes and generations before. And one of my favorite aspects of the role involves people coming up to me and saying how they set a record in track at White Stadium back in the day, or, so many different connections, and now being able to add to this next generation and this future for those students is a huge part of the mission of the legacy that's personal, as well as a commitment of the entirety of the team.
Yeah, that's great. Talk about some of the other benefits. So obviously, having this track and these facilities available to the high school students is huge. What other things are coming into the community and into the stadium itself and into the park as part of this project? Yeah,
in addition to a number of those benefits you mentioned for the athletes, including the ability to triple the amount of programming that can take place with the improvements to the infrastructure and the resources like public bathrooms and water fountains for students, as well as a number of different facilities. And there are additional benefits for community members as who they'll be able to access the park. We're going to be able to triple the amount of hours that those stadium will be available and accessible to community members. They made that very clear. Public access is really critical and it is important. And the renovation will be able to do that. As well as tremendous economic benefit, right? We've intentionally committed to ensuring that the community participates in the building of this renovation, as well as the operation of it, and to ensure that those dollars are flowing within the community, recognizing that transformative impact that can have for lifelong contract opportunities for businesses that will have residents in a home in White Stadium. And then obviously we know the economic impact that will have for the homeowners, renters, and all the folks in that area.
So does that mean that Legacy is not contracting with like an Aramark or a national chain to bring in like the concessions and things, or what do you mean when you say that the operations will be run by local folks? Yeah,
exactly. So we made a pretty ambitious commitment to awarding 50% of our contracts to local businesses, as well as minority and women business-owned enterprises.
Okay.
And a specific focus, again, on making sure that those are flowing back into the households in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain, and the neighborhoods that surround it, as well as the entire city. And you have intentionally worked to hit that ambitious goal in a number of different ways. So we're working with the city, and we have established a supplier diversity advisory group that gives us they're experts in the field who have accomplished similar initiatives and worked on similar projects at this scale, who help us to identify who are different businesses within the community that could fulfill a lot of those different needs, whether that's on the operational side or the construction side. We're thinking now with the impact for the totality of the project.
I know that, obviously those are great, but there are obviously still a lot of detractors who are not fans of this project who are very vocal. There's still lawsuits, or at least lawsuits in the conversation. Whether or not they're still happening, I'm not entirely sure. So can you address some of those concerns? Obviously, parking, traffic are two big ones. I'll let you start there, and then I've got a few others.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest parts of this role has been how we've been able to tangibly respond to concerns and convert them into concessions, into commitments. And specific as relates to parking into transportation, we actually, for transparency purposes, released recently a public draft of a transportation plan with different ideas of how we aim to mitigate traffic and specific investments that we'll make, particularly activating Southwest Corridor, the biking around the area, as well as looking into different options for ride shares, and that making sure that those are also accessible in the same way that the stadium will be ADA accessible. We're looking to a number of different multimodal options to be able to address some of these concerns around parking and be able to deliver confidently that folks will be able to respond to the interest that we anticipate coming on game day and be able to do so through a diversity of ways, whether that's walking to the stadium, whether that's through the ride share, whether that's through shuttles, and working with the different T-stops that they'll be located in a place that we're working directly on hearing and from community residents, and have received hundreds of responses to that draft plan, and are incorporating that specifically into what we will incorporate. And I think what that speaks to the larger impact of where we aim to impact beyond game days, because there's been a clamoring for all the events already happen at Franklin Park, right? And the ability to provide resources to create a coordinated and comprehensive plan to addressing those and to play a role in that is like one of the areas where I'm most interested and eager into participating.
So things like the shuttles and ride sharing and things, those will be in place all the time, not just during games?
So there will be specific plans for game day, as well as thinking holistically for the whole year. Okay. And that draft transportation plan actually breaks it down into specific sections. So it's like, what does it look like on game day? What does it look on game day if you're a resident within the specific walkshed and area of the park? What does it look like if you're arriving via some of the shuttles, where you're driving, ride share? And it is a pretty comprehensive doc that speaks to the diversity of different needs for transportation, whether that's game day as well as beyond, large-scale permit events that happen, other parts of the year, BPS activities. We're hoping to build one comprehensive document that reflects the differences and what operations will look like on those different days.
You mentioned the walkshed. Can you define exactly what the walkshed means?
Yeah, so the walkshed exists as an area to specifically outline certain protections for parking, as well as thinking about the impacts on folks who are trying to get to the game.
Okay.
So essentially, you could think of an outline of specific streets that are bound to the north, south, east, and west. And this is available in that draft transportation plan. Folks can see specifically which streets are included in that. Okay. But essentially outlines a portion of area around the stadium that's reflective of us thinking about the impact on those who are closest to White Stadium.
And that means in those streets, there's no parking without a permit? Or what is the walkshed?
So we're currently in, again, the process of outlining and finalizing those of like what that will actually look like. This is, as I mentioned earlier, why the community engagement process is so important. Yeah. My perspective has been expanded on the different opinions around permitted parking, and whether folks are for or against it. You know, I thought this would be a no-brainer for some folks who want the protections of their neighborhoods, but then folks who have also talked about the unintended consequences potentially of what that could mean for folks who are not from their neighborhood but are intending to visit on specific days. So we're collecting all of that information from neighbors right now to be able to think about what would be the ideal setup for folks who are going to be literally in the closest proximity to White Stadium as outlined by that walkshed.
Okay, so that's still TBD.
Yes.
Okay, got it. I think some of the other concerns are around, you mentioned access to the park is important to people. There is a lot of outcry about, I don't know about a lot, but there is certainly a vocal outcry about this is a public park. It should not be restricted to private entities. Talk about the details of the private-public partnership that you've entered into and what restrictions are being put on public access.
Yeah, I would say, actually, I'll speak to the expansions to public access because that served as one of the key priorities for both the city as well as the team, hearing that specific passion that you mentioned for folks wanting to protect this public asset, this crown jewel. And we reflected that in a number of different specific protections and contractual agreements, specifically through a lease and a standard usage agreement. So ironclad documents that outline that one first ensures that this is not privatization because the city retains full ownership of the entirety of White Stadium. We exist as the tenant who is renting out space NY Stadium. So that public ownership remains to the city and to the people of the city, as well as in terms of public access, specific agreements and conditions in there around there's a certain limit on the number of games that we can play, right? We can no more than 20, right? About 5% of the year. Or when you look at the months from March to November when the season takes place, those nice, bright, warm weather months, folks were concerned about making sure we protect those weekends. We're talking about 20 of 114 Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, right? So about 17%, right, or so. So 4 out of 5 of them untouched completely. And even on those days, specific protections that are, again, codified into lease agreements that are available to the public for them to be able to see how we're thinking about the prioritization of scheduling. Again, for the large-scale permit events that are already happening there, BPS events and all of those different protections, they're making sure that they're included. One of my favorite is there is a certain amount of games that we can schedule within a 2 to 4 week period. It cannot be more than 2 in a 4 week period. So ensuring that at least a majority of the weekends are still available and impacted by games, right? Because again, we heard that as like a key passionate outcry from folks across the spectrum on the project.
Yeah. So the rest of the park is still completely open all the time, even if there's a game, right? Like you can go walk through the park if the stadium is being used. Yeah,
we actually see our role as a positive contributing neighbor to a growing ecosystem that already exists at Franklin Park. We mentioned earlier about my relationship to the park, my ability to walk down there. I walk regularly with my wife and my newborn son, and Congrats. It's fun, thank you, to go, whether we go to the Franklin Park Zoo, or I actually started recently getting into golf because I felt more culturally inclusive at pull up at the golf course at Divine, and now to be able to have White Stadium, think about another magnet or another community space for folks to be able to come to as they experience the rest of the magnitude of the park and all of the wonderful things that already happen there. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. Does Legacy have any association with the other events that will happen there? And I don't mean the BPS things. I mean, like, will there be concerts? Will there be shows? Like, what other things will happen in the stadium, and are you affiliated with that at all?
So first, we're starting by thinking about our relationship about what already precedes us, right? What's already happening in the parks, and we've been intentional about making sure we reach out to and try to communicate consistently with the inhabitants of the park, and folks already in there and have space there. As I mentioned earlier, the zoo is one of my favorite activities there, and talking about what will our impact as neighbors be, and trying to think about that in concert with them, as well as thinking about, again, large-scale permit events and what that impact will be. We start by thinking about the consideration of the impact on those who have preceded us, and then also, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to be able to contribute by thinking of a comprehensive plan for transportation for all of these different moving pieces for folks that would benefit from that not existing currently, and then thinking about all of those pieces in concert with them.
I know a lot of folks were continue to be annoyed with the financial side of it, so they feel like they shouldn't be contributing to a private team's stadium access. How would you respond to that?
I totally understand that. I think typically folks are wary of these kind of deals because they think that a city is putting up public tax dollars to subsidize a billionaire's toy thing. And to that point, I think that actually speaks to the appeal of this unique partnership, where it works in the reverse, where the team essentially is subsidizing the city's renovation of this.
Although one could argue the renovation would be much cheaper were they not making a FIFA-approved stadium. Right.
I think in some ways, one other part or another way of looking at this too is, and one of the things that drew me to this role in particular as I transitioned from the community member who was attending community meetings and had my perspective expanded, was hearing about the significant burden of maintenance as well, right? And I think one of the benefits I feel most proud of as a team is us taking on maintenance for the entirety of the city, which when you do the calculation, particularly as you look over this 30-year lease that we're thinking about, we're calculating about $2 million per year. Over 30 years is $60 million.
Yeah.
And that we're on the hook for. And that's a projection of $2 million now.
And that's going to go up.
That's probably right. Anyone who's rented or anyone who owns a home and is at HOA, if you think that's going down, imagine if I was able to tell you overall to, summarize the partnership, we should go 50-50 on a place. I'll cover 50% of the 50% of the cost, even though I will only be there for about 5 to 10% of the year. And I'll take on the HOA cost in perpetuity regardless of whether that goes up or not.
Not a bad deal.
I think you probably would wonder what my motive would be, why I would take on a deal like that, especially if you retained 100% equity.
Right. And you have access to it a lot more.
I literally have contractually obligated only 20 days, no more than that for soccer games. Right. And then additional practice, although we will make other investments in practice facilities as well. Okay. So we're talking, again, 5 to 10% of the year, you retain 100% equity and get me to cover 50% of the cost.
Yeah, that's a good, compelling argument. One other concern I wanted to ask you about is gentrification. So that area is already seeing some gentrification, particularly I think on the JP side of Franklin Park. Costs are really high. Housing costs are extremely high. Other surrounding areas are actually some of the more affordable parts of these neighborhoods. Are you concerned about, if this is a successful project, which we hope it will be, it could drive up costs across the board? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think I operate with the urgency for addressing the gentrification already happening. Right. And I think about that from the perspective as a homeowner who's on that affordable side in Roxbury in the Garrison Trotter neighborhood. I thought about it in my relationship, been contributing to it as someone who bought in 2019 and someone who has been in the area for these last 6 years since. Right. And I think that's been going on throughout the last 40 years of futility as it relates to the renovation of White Stadium, which prompts a question like, what are we doing about that? Because that's going to happen and is happening regardless of whether or not this renovation happens. And I think this renovation provides an opportunity to at least tangibly respond to providing a solution for how we plan to employ folks from our community as a mechanism for their economic mobility to address that, right? Yeah. If these folks are part of these lifetime contracts, again, we're talking about that 30-year lease, we're talking about what that can do for a sustained business across multiple entrepreneurships, across multiple households, addressing their ability to be able to stay in their home and to be able to address gentrification. That's a tangible solution that I can provide to this conversation, and I welcome others.
Yeah. I think gentrification is often misused as a term. Progress and development doesn't necessarily equal gentrification, but it's a very easy boogeyman.
Agree.
I think it's used to justify NIMBYism at times, which it's a whole different podcast.
Happy to have that conversation too. It's important.
I want to talk about the high school students. So they're getting some pretty world-class facilities out of this. And they're getting some role models, which is really cool because women's sports are starting to be more visible in the U.S.
Yes, absolutely.
Women's basketball is really exploding with some of these great stars who have emerged. And women's soccer has been a force in U.S. for a long time. I mean, I'm from Rochester. Abby Wambach was a Rochesterian. Mia Hamm has been on the scene for ages, right? Yep. So talk about how you guys see the influence of your club on these students, especially high school girls, and how you think they're going to benefit from these facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about that role model piece, I think we think about that in, again, very tangible terms versus some esoteric notion that you just happen to see people. And obviously there's power in representation, but I think very tangibly for us, one of the biggest benefits of this partnership is that direct relationship where we are investing in their development and doing so in a number of different ways, including paid internships, scholarships, and top-tier training spaces, right? So there is that sense of self and self-advocacy, right, around like I can actually achieve athletically and maybe have a career like an Olympian, like you just mentioned, because I'm literally in the same facility and accessing the same resources that they are, as well as other development pathways for thinking about their careers outside of sports as well, or within sports, and providing very tangible pathways for them. I think that relationship is what we mean when we talk about our impact 365 days a year, right? That obviously is for the students who will enjoy the tripled programming, as well as increased in improvement in their facilities for their training, but also the direct relationship with the pro sports. And as we know in the city, folks are pretty passionate when it comes to their sports, both for BPS as well as pro sports.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch base with you on is timing. So it seems like there's been some delays on the construction. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have a deadline sent down from FIFA, right? Or from NWSL that you have to have a stadium ready by the end of, by spring of next year? What is your deadline?
So our timeline still remains with the slight adjustments you mentioned. We had originally planned to play in spring 2026.
Okay.
As you correctly mentioned, the construction has been delayed, and we will play at Gillette for our inaugural season 2026. And then we are aiming to be ready for the spring 2027 at White Stadium. as their home launch.
What was the delay?
The delay, construction.
But nothing unforeseen. Just.
No, I think this was taken into consideration from the beginning. And yeah, anyone who's ever done any construction, whether it's a small home rebuild or something to this significant magnitude and scale, can understand that timelines adjust.
Got it. Okay. So we'll see the legacy coming in to White Stadium in 2027.
Yep.
And the season starts in March, you said?
Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. You're from Chicago.
Born and raised in the north side of Chicago.
Are you a fan of the Bear?
Yes, actually, I just started rewatching season 3. I should say rewatching. Started resuming watching because I'd fallen off after the end of season 2, and I'm 2 seasons behind. But yes,
because it just dropped. Season 4 dropped.
Exactly. I think that's probably
Tuesday.
Why it was on top of mine, because it was promoted to me.
I'm very excited that the new season is out. I need to pace myself though, because I tend to binge them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing.
And I've got a year, so I need to make it last at least a month.
2 seasons behind. So in the same train with
you. Got some time. Yeah. Well, speaking of food, you're a local guy now. Where do you find yourself eating in Dorchester?
Yeah, I find myself eating at a few different places. So again, Roxbury, I have to use this opportunity to shout Suya Joint for a number of different reasons. They played a key role in bringing me home and making Roxbury and Dorchester feel like home and feel like Chicago. And they're especially top of mind right now in this moment. I'm a huge fan of Just Thai and Fields Corner. I love Thai food on a day like today where it's gloomy. And I'm just saying the entire outline of Dorchester Ave all the way up for on a day like today. I'm feeling kind of inspired. So I would say those are probably the few spots that come to mind immediately. Awesome. And then also Bread Gourmet. If we were going to count Laura Mills, again, we could have the debate around. I would say that's Dorchester.
That's Dorchester.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure. Oh, he's a Laura Mills boy. He's mad at you now. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming and having this conversation. And I'll see you at a Legacy game.
Yeah, great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Welcome back to DotLife. We have heard from one side of the White Stadium conversation today, but I'm very excited to bring in a neutral voice from New York State, actually. Astute listeners of the podcast know that I am from the upstate New York area. Mostly I claim Buffalo as home, but I did live in Rochester for about 6 to 7 years post-college, and I'm really thrilled to bring in to the conversation Bob Duffy. Bob, thank you so much for joining. And Bob is currently the president and CEO of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, but the reason that you're here today is because you served 2 other extremely important roles in relation to this conversation, which is the mayor of Rochester from 2006 to 2011, and the lieutenant governor of New York State from 2011 to 2015. And during that time, I know that you were not the originator or in the original conversations about what we're calling Paetec Park. I know it's gone through a lot of iterations since then and has had many different names, but you did come into the mayoral position before it opened, correct?
Yes, correct. I was there for the actual grand opening in 2006.
And there's a lot of parallels between White Stadium and Paetec Park. Are you okay if we call it Paetec Park? I know it's not called that anymore, but that's how I remember it. There's a lot of parallels and there's a lot of differences. And I think what you can bring to this discussion to help people of Dorchester kind of get a better perspective on why did something like that not go well? Why can it go well? And what are the differences here with White Stadium that maybe they can learn lessons from, or maybe not be as concerned about as they are today. So before we get into that, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Rochester, grew up in the west side, actually the same side of the city where the stadium was built and still is. Started my career in 1976, hate to say it, the Rochester Police Department. I was in college at the time. Actually was a junior going into my senior year at a Division III school in New Hampshire, and took the police test on a lark that year. I was working for the city recreation, running a basketball league, and I was notified I'd be hired later that fall. So I decided to go back to school or not. I decided in the end, I stayed, started that career, and went up, very lucky in that career. In 2006, I actually finished, ran for mayor, but up through the ranks, I think it was 1998 through 2005, I was the chief of police. And then in 2000, and I retired in actually late 2004, beginning of 2005. Then I was urged to run for mayor, which I was against, and so was my family. But I did. Very very happy to get elected, and I served one full term. Had no opponent my second term, and then was asked by the then former governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, to be his running mate for lieutenant governor. Uh, in true disclosure, I think I said no for the first 20 minutes. The next 45 minutes was pressure being put out by the former governor. So I eventually relented, ran, and served 4 years with the governor his first term. And, while it was a very different job, he treated me like a full partner. And the things you've heard since, I did not see or did not exist back then. And I learned a great deal and met great people around the state. So you travel a lot. I always say governors fly, lieutenant governors drive. I learned that New York State is a very big state
It is.
when you're in the car driving from city to city and town to town. But I'm very lucky. And then I started with the Chamber of Commerce, would have been in 2015. Been here ever since. Have a great team. And I'm out of politics, which I'm very happy to be. But I still get to interact and I work closely with elected officials and business leaders. So very lucky to be really part of a great team and a great community.
Well, I remember every time I go home to visit family, how long New York State is. You hit Albany and you're not even halfway there, so I can relate to your your
Yes, you're
drive.
absolutely correct.
So set the stage for us a little bit. So you came into the mayor position, and this was already in progress. So you were picking up, and where was it when you picked up?
Well, I remember the contentious issues because when it first came up, it started with the soccer league at that time, which I think the Rochester Rhinos were playing. They wanted a stadium just for soccer because they were playing before in a stadium, our minor league baseball team, our Red Wings. So they were kind of sharing the use of that stadium. The league wanted a soccer only stadium, which started discussions. There were two very powerful leaders in the state, a state senator, Mike Mazzolio, who wanted this new stadium to be out in the town of Gates on the west side, outside the city. A very powerful assembly member, David Gant, who has since passed away, wanted it in the city in a challenged neighborhood near the baseball stadium, but on the west side. So a little bit of back and forth. In the end, David Gant won out. I think the stadium was $30 million to build. The state provided about 23 to 24 million. The rest was made up by the city and also the soccer team. And the stadium was built and then it opened. When it started all these issues, I was in my police career at that time, came into City Hall and was proud to be at the grand opening of the stadium. A absolutely beautiful structure in 2006. I believe it was June 2006. And, it went off. And I have to say this, the stadium was beautiful. Very well done. I've been to soccer games, football games, concerts, drum and bugle corps events as mayor and afterwards there. Uh, have never seen nor had a problem at the stadium, but as I'll be happy to discuss, I think one of the challenges eventually that came was the perception of safety that existed in that neighborhood. And over the course of time, I really believe it did impact, aside from other things that happened, but did impact eventually people wanting to come down to attend events.
So let's step back and look at David Gant's reasoning for why city positioning was so critical. There were a lot of pros that he was focused on. That area in particular, a lot of areas of Rochester have some lovely facilities and stores and areas, but that area in particular was not very well developed, if I remember correctly. And he really wanted the economic boost for it. I think the argument against that, and you can tell me if I'm remembering this right, was if you build them, they will come is a not necessarily a guarantee, right? So if we put it in a spot where people aren't, will they come out for that? So talk
You're
about those two
correct.
sides.
The area the stadium was built was, I would say, on a cusp of an industrial area, but also bordered a neighborhood. In a neighborhood, I mean, I grew up not too far away from there. I rode my bike there as kids and certainly served there in my police career. It's a great old Rochester neighborhood. It had issues, certainly poverty, a lot of issues that we see in cities across America. But David Gant's thought was build this, create jobs for the neighbors that can come in and whatever jobs the stadium would create, and really help with a revitalization. So his thoughts and strategies were honorable. Senator Zolio wanted it out in the town of Gates off of Route 490 interstate. His thought was large piece of land, easy access off expressways for people. And really both had good ideas. I think both, neither one was dishonorable. I don't think Senator Zolio wanted outside the city for any anti-city reasons, nor did David Gant want it in the city for any anti-suburban or party lines. The senator was Republican, David Gant was a Democrat, so you have those issues that pop up. But in the end, it was selected to build it on its current site.
And was there parking included, Bob?
Pardon?
Was there parking included in the urban site?
It was. There's parking, pretty, well, I'd say a lot. I can't remember how large it was, but there was parking adjacent to it. And there's parking along the street. I mean, people would park on the street. There were always special events, police officers from the Rochester Police Department there. But you could always find parking nearby. There were a couple of restaurants nearby. And again, the intent was a good one. I would say in the end, did development happen because of the stadium? In the end, probably not. But it wasn't because of the stadium. I think that some development did occur, and some very positive things did happen in the neighborhood eventually. But it goes back to it's not exact science, as you said, build it and they'll come, or let them come and they'll build it. I do think when people attempt to do those things, their intentions are pure, honorable. Sometimes they work out and have huge success. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I want to get into the funding side of it. You talked about the funding allocation and the split between the city and the state and private funding. The Boston project is heavily subsidized by the city. Talk about how that worked out and how do you, if you were involved or if you're aware of how that split came to be, and were there issues getting funding from the committed parties throughout the project?
That's a good question. I believe with the power of the elected officials at the state level, David Gant from the Assembly and Mike Mazzolio, because eventually he agreed. And then my predecessor, Mayor Bill Johnson, was also involved with this. So New York State came through again with the money. I believe it was Governor Pataki would have been in office at that time. And so they came out of a $30 million project. They covered 23. The exact split between the soccer team, the Rhinos, and the city, I'm not really sure. The city did some infrastructure development there as well from 2004 to 2006 with the construction. But somewhere along the line, they split about a $6 million total between the two.
And I believe Paetec, who I believe became Windstream eventually,
Yes.
they had naming rights to the stadium. So they kicked in a portion of that to help cover their
They
naming
did.
rights.
I forgot what the exact amount was, but Paytech did get the naming rights, and they were really an up and coming large company at that time.
So the funding was mostly covered. It's so I was telling you earlier, it's so shocking to see the differences in funding between 20 to the early 2000s and 2025. Just the inflation and the changes in what things cost is shocking when you look at it in these terms. But the funding wasn't necessarily a problem because the state was willing to pay for so much of it. The location we've talked about. What about the ownership and maintenance? So the situation here in Boston will be that White Stadium will continue to be owned by the city. The soccer team, Legacy Football Club, will manage the maintenance long term. So they're leasing the stadium and they're covering the maintenance. Do you remember if that was the situation there?
Very similar. The city still owns the stadium to this day.
Mhm.
Back then, there was a sports group. I believe it was a combination of owners of the soccer team,
Okay.
also a group of sports management people. The name Frank DeRoss was the leader. Frank was from Utica. Frank was very knowledgeable, very talented executive. So, what the exact split was, I wouldn't recall what that would be, but they had, again, a contract to take care of the stadium, the maintenance.
Okay.
And every event I went to, I mean, it was pristine. There were things that weren't always finished. There were locker rooms that weren't completed. So even when it opened in 2006, I can't say it was totally completed. And even over the years, sometimes I'm not sure that everything was completed because there were small things that weren't done.
Well, they had phased, I remember there was a development of like 25 luxury suites that they had intended to build. They ended up not building them with the initial, and I don't know if those ever got constructed.
They built some. I know that because the soccer team, which was very popular and really drew at that time a lot of people. And there still is a soccer team today that is playing in a game this weekend at the stadium. So it still goes on. But there was progressions. I think a lot of it comes down to funding, where their vision sometimes hit the reality of funding at that time. But it was an ongoing process. But having been there so many times, the field was pristine. It was a beautiful stadium, manicured. Having been there so many times and having been with people who have attended events there, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
The only thing was the big issue over the years is why is it so successful when they were at the Red Wing Stadium? Why did things change a quarter mile away or so with the new stadium in terms of attendance? That was a challenge over time.
So talk about that. You mentioned kind of the public safety perception. Talk a little more about that neighborhood and I think part of, Rochester's significantly smaller, obviously, than Boston, so it was relying on drawing in people from the suburban perimeter. Did they not feel comfortable coming into the city? Was that part of the problem?
Yeah, it didn't start off that way. I think over time it did. And I can't point to any one incident. Sometimes if some huge incident occurs, you could see where that would happen. There wasn't. I would say the perception often is much stronger than the reality when it comes to crime. And I can't think of one specific incident in that area when I was in office that would cause alarm. I mean, there's crime and there'd be car break-ins or people hustling or panhandling for money. But that area, the neighborhood, was primarily residential on one end. If you go out west, the east side was more commercial because it probably within two golf shots was Eastman Kodak, the Kodak office, Carestream, which was an offshoot of Kodak at that time, some smaller companies. So you had kind of a mix of both. People could walk over to the stadium for an event. Kodak was very close to Carestream, both at that time, much higher levels of employment than today. But I could see the vision, what they thought of back then. But I do think over time, and probably even over the last several years, that fear perception has gone up dramatically. And
Mm.
Rochester certainly has its share of crime and poverty and challenges, like any city. But I can't point to and say that neighborhood was solely responsible. It was not. I mean, there's drug dealing, open air drug dealing, blocks away. It happens. Um, but again, it's more the perception where if people don't feel safe coming in, or if something happens that they get approached walking in their car or coming from the stadium, sometimes they don't come back. If they get a parking ticket or have a bad experience, they don't come back. And that really has gone up. It didn't happen initially, but over the course of many years, even culminating in the last 2 or 3 years when our Section 5 is the local high school section for the state in terms of sports. They used to play their football championship games at Paetec Park, or it changed names over the years. And so high schools, different classifications would play their championship game there. I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, might have been a little bit longer. Section 5 pulled out of the stadium. They started having those games at some of the SUNY campuses, the U of R, other colleges, even other high schools. And they did cite the concerns that parents and kids had of coming down to the stadium.
Yeah, that is a big part of this contract is that the BPS students will be able to have access to these world-class facilities, which is a huge pro. And nicely, this White Stadium is in a beautiful park that was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted. I think that one of the concerns, obviously, this is always a concern with any development in a city like Boston, which has so much congestion, is parking and traffic.
Mhm.
Do you remember, Rochester's different, I'm going to acknowledge that right now, but do you remember any specific incidents with traffic? That is a tight area for driving in Rochester. So what was the result there from the stadium?
There would be from baseball to soccer. There would be some occasional tie-ups, but the cops always did a great job directing traffic, clearing it out. I've gone to baseball games and soccer games, and you might wait for 5 minutes, but parking was always available, and not only for the park, but these adjacent lots going back to Kodak and Carestream, they're all fairly close. So, and people might choose to park on the street, which was usually free. And there's plenty of street parking. You could along actually it was Broad Street at that time. Um, But no, I don't think there was any concerns about tie-ups. The neighbors never complained about that. I think the neighbors look for opportunities, and there might be from tickets and concessions and things, jobs for kids. Having grown up on the west side, anything at all, and summer jobs, part-time jobs are great opportunities. Um, I don't believe the neighbors ever complain. I don't believe the companies ever complain. Um, but from the start, I do think that perception was put out there about crime and safety, and maybe the location and gates might be a better one. I think that was played a little bit, not to the level that eventually happened down there, but I'm sure that was part of the conversation back then. There was quite a back and forth before this site was selected.
Yeah.
I kind of had a seat watching and the media, but I was not involved with those. And Mayor Johnson was an excellent mayor. He certainly isn't going to push for the city. If I was in office, the same thing. Although I have great respect for Senator Mazzoli, who was not in office but still here. I understood what he was trying to do. I knew the developer who owned the property, a great family in Rochester, the Galena family. But I think as a mayor, I would want it downtown. I would want it in the city too. And so, so nobody, I guess the lack of success now, it's not dead. It's still alive. It's still going. But what the expectation was and hope in the beginning versus where it is today is nobody's fault. I think it's just a series of things that happen over time that maybe have eroded the confidence in the stadium, but it's still there, and they still host activities. Our current mayor, Mayor Evans, they use it quite a bit. I think it's a great facility. They could have knocked it down and had a company come in and build. They never did. And I don't believe there's going to be a resurgence there. I don't. Um, but there have been people here that have floated out building another soccer stadium in another part of the city or out in the suburbs. It has never really taken hold anywhere, but those discussions have taken place.
That's interesting. What did it do for employment? I mean, even if it never realized its full potential as hoped for, there had to have been an increase in jobs in that neighborhood.
I think construction to start with was a great thing, and the city has always been very strong in trying to get as many jobs as you can to people in the neighborhood or the city. So I don't have numbers in front of me, but I do believe city residents, even people from that neighborhood, would have been involved in applying for some of those jobs, even if they weren't skilled laborers. There are things they could do to help. Other jobs popped up from concessions, ticket takers, security, things like that. The city has always given preference to city residents. And I think every mayor, every executive has tried to make sure that people in that neighborhood at least are given an opportunity if they want it to come in and be part of it. The number of jobs I couldn't speak to, it's seasonal. It's like the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they're going strong for 8 or 10 games a year, and then the stadium is not really used other than for an occasional concert or event. So it wasn't like an ongoing string of employment opportunities, but when it was going, it did offer a lot. I remember I'm not a drum and bugle gore person, but I remember going to these big championships. The place was packed.
Yeah.
People from probably 4 or 5 different states coming in. And then I'll fast forward probably 2 years ago. My wife and I were at a restaurant, and I was approached by the owner who told me that one of the officials from the Drum and Bugle Corps said they're not going to go back to Paetec Park or Shallons, whatever it's called today, again, because of they had some incident and they were fearful. So I reached out to the mayor right away. By the time they ran it down, the person who was really in charge of that event said, "Oh no, we had no problem." And somebody may have sensed something on the bus pulling away. There could have been some comments made. There were no assaults, robberies, thefts. But again, it takes on a whole life of its own sometimes if people say something. But when the owner of the restaurant mentioned that to me, I felt the duty to let the mayor know right away. He jumped right on it, and at least that issue was addressed. And that group is still coming back.
I think you bring up a good point, which is PR. For a while, I think it was very in vogue to hate on Paetec Park. Between that and the Fast Ferry, which were both around the same time, they were kind of the projects that failed in Rochester in the general zeitgeist, even if they weren't failures. And I think the media maybe fanned the flames a little bit at times. Do you feel like the PR was a problem?
I think the PR was a problem. I also think sometimes with developments, a lot more work has to go in preemptively, and I'm not so sure that always was done. When you have local developers and business leaders who want no part of something, and it's totally funded by the state, federal, or local government, you have to ask yourself why. And I think when you have a public-private partnership, there's a give and take on both sides. And I'm not so sure that's always taken place. And sometimes elected officials want to take credit and not share it. But a lot of elected officials who I know, most of all, have little or no experience in business at all, or finance. And there really should be a public finance course for every elected official in terms of understanding that. I went to the Maxwell School for my master's, and I remember taking public finance, budgeting, long before I was police chief. But I mean, that's to me is the baseline for things you have to learn. And then in my role, I always think I've never been the smartest guy in the room, but I try and get people around me who are much smarter, much more experienced, and ask them. And even when I was mayor, I built a team that was phenomenal. I never asked what party they were from. I didn't care if they supported me or not in a campaign. I wanted the smartest, best people I could get. I have no problem leading, but I want to hear people. I want to get the expertise around a table to help guide us to the best decisions.
Yeah.
And I can't say that always happened because it becomes a little political wrangling. Who's in charge? This is my project. And I found with major projects, you mentioned a couple, that sometimes people that should have been consulted or part of it may have backed away or weren't asked. And sometimes those who are on a table are working for the mayor, the senator, the assembly member, and no one's going to say no or rain on a parade. And I think it's important for any executive, fast forward to Boston and Dorchester, you would want to hear from those voices that disagreed, and you want to get the best minds around a table to get their opinions. Is this a good project? Is it good development? It sounds pretty positive, but you want to get people at the table. And there'll always be issues of traffic and the neighbors. And listen, any one of our neighborhoods we live in, we don't want more cars coming through, more people always. I don't care where you live. I get that. But then again, you can't stop progress. I think there's got to be a give and take. So you make the neighbors part of that process, and hopefully get to maybe not a perfect point, but get to a point where you have a consensus.
Last question on this. Were you to go back and maybe be there when all of this started? So I know that you weren't at the time, but if you were able to put yourself in those initial conversations from start to finish on this project, what would you have liked to see done differently?
I would have done more work preemptively. I mean, I'm not a huge survey person. I've been I have polls in politics. I would have taken a list of soccer fans and people that attend events, and I would have a survey, a public. I would pay for that. If the park is here, will you attend events? If yes, tell me why. If not, tell me why. I would look at that. I would do a much deeper study. I look at both locations because right now we think much more regionally. In Rochester, I think the city and county get along much better than they did back then. We have a mayor and a county executive that actually get along very well. We all work together very well. The old competition and even the political wrangling, it's pretty much a one-party government right now, city and state. But the elected officials work pretty well together. But I would really have done a much more thoughtful deep dive into what is the best location. You want success. And there's different ways of thinking about that. And I think I would have done a little bit more of that. I would have looked at the cost estimate. I mean, would 30 million cover it all? Obviously. You don't want to have a stadium or a home that's partially finished. You want to have it done. But I'm not sure that all the front end work was done back then. It never is because mayors, county executives, everybody's busy. It's on this project, on to the next one. But I think in retrospect, and I'm not a Monday morning quarterback, but knowing what I know now, seeing failures and successes, I think the work done up front, getting the right people around a table and really drilling down is one of the best ways to start off. Just make sure you're on the right point. And again, I would have, as a mayor, opted for that city location. But it came back where people said, no, I won't go there, but I will go out to Gates. Maybe that would have been the best location. overall. And maybe it would have been more advantageous to keep it going, and because you want kids to come. Kids are a big part of soccer and all the leagues. That you want them coming. You want their parents to bring them down. You don't want people not being unsafe, even feeling unsafe. And so I grew up in a city, lived there most of my life. I have friends that even officers who I dealt with growing up, I think police officers sometimes had a fear of neighborhoods that I'd ride my bike in, hang out with, played basketball, knew people on the street. There's different perspectives of people in any neighborhood or any city in terms of what will work and what won't. But it would have been a perfect, perhaps, initial steps. But I do think that public survey, a little more work, and making sure it's not politicized or not city versus county, but just think what is best. Back then, what people have felt is keep the stadium with the baseball stadium. People wanted it there. They can fill up that stadium. It's beautiful to this day, but soccer league didn't want that. And the baseball team, it was a hit on them. But if it could have something built next to it, maybe right there, bought property side by side or done something, it would have had a much higher success rate than it does today. It's literally only a quarter mile away. I mean, you can walk there. You can see it from one to the next. And it's just, who can figure human nature and why these decisions are made. But I would tell you today with this soccer championship game, they work so hard to push this. They'll get fans there, but nowhere near what they could have gotten there had we not had to deal with all the perceptions.
Well, and I think that there's a tendency to think about development like that from a city by city perspective instead of regionally, and potentially regionally, if the stadium had been located in Gates, it still might have had knock-on effects for the rest of the region. So the city may have still benefited. We'll never know. But to your point, like if that's a better location and it continues to grow the entire region, maybe that would have been better.
No, I agree. You mentioned the fast ferry, and I feel bad because I'm the one that shut that down in 2006. But it was a huge
for folks who
success.
don't know, in Dorchester, the fast ferry was a ferry service that went from the Port of Rochester to the Port of Toronto.
And it was filled up every time the Yankees played the Blue Jays. And it was a great thing, and the former mayor did a great job putting it in place. But then a lot of other things that they hoped would happen didn't happen. And it goes back to, I think, planning ahead of time is so important, and getting as much information as you can. But your point is, if it started off, say, Senator Zolio was successful, it was built in Gates off 490, it may have been successful. It may have not. Teams changed over the years, leagues changed. But I do think today, given the perceptions, probably would have been an easier draw. But it's kind of sad too, because we're all about trying to uplift people and provide opportunities and access, and hopefully knock down some of these fears. I know Boston very well. I'm there every other month for a meeting. Boston's a great city, and I think my sense is it's going to have much more chance for success than Rochester. It's different. The way it's the population, traffic is always a problem. I get it always is, but I just think the way Boston is, and I always say, if I was starting over again, coming out of college, and I had to pick a place to live outside my hometown, it would have been Boston.
We'd love to have you.
It's a great city. It just is. Other than I'm a diehard Bills fan, and
so am I, Bob. I'm trying to blaze a trail here. I'm starting a contingent.
Yep, trying. But I do think wherever Boston would put it, it would probably be successful, I would think. And the neighbors, I get that part too, especially with Boston traffic. I'm usually from Logan to a hotel, into a meeting business room, 2 blocks away, then back to Logan. That's been my life.
It still takes you 45 minutes to get there.
Yeah, it is. And I've gone with my kids and my family. We've toured it, walked around. I love the history. I love New England, and they do so many things so well up there. And I would say, I was with a driver 2 weeks ago. He said, "City's safe." I mean, people feel Boston is safe. I have walked from restaurants back to the hotel at night pretty big group that goes out. Felt totally safe. I mean, it was like no one out. I was trying to get back to a Bills game one night when all my colleagues could care less. So I'm probably half a mile away from the hotel. I don't want to take Uber, so I'm walking. I'm going to walk out and have my phone going, and never felt unsafe at any point finding my way back there.
Yeah.
But I do think the thought process up to that point, I mean, going through the planning, I'm sure the mayor is heavily involved, and a mayor, a county executive, the council members. You want to make sure your neighbors and constituents are engaged and listened to. And you're never going to get people saying, "Hey, we all want this."
Right.
You'll never get 100% agreement, but just getting as much information as you can and making the best decision.
Well, I usually end this with one question, but I'm going to give you two because you have a unique perspective. So I'm going to ask you, number one, what's your favorite place to go in Boston for food or drinks? And then I'm going to give you a chance to pitch Rochester to the Dorchester crew. So what's your favorite place in Rochester?
Well, first of all, in Boston, we always go to the Seaport. The last restaurant was Moo, which is near the Seaport. So I'm on a board, so we walk, and the person that gets the restaurants always picks great ones. We stay at the Intercontinental Hotel, so we always kind of walk or Uber from there. But there are so many restaurants to pick from. There's some right next to the hotel. You could walk. I've never had a bad meal in Boston, ever. And for Rochester, I would say we're much smaller. It's a foodie city.
It is.
You hear about the garbage plate. That's kind of a funny thing. I've had too many of those in my life. But you could pick any kind of food. I mean, we have so much diversity here in terms of food, ethnicity. There are great restaurants everywhere in the city, outside the suburbs. And right now with staffing, sometimes they're closed on Sundays, closed on Mondays, closed on Tuesdays. Getting people back to work post-COVID is not the easiest thing. But we have the Strong Museum of Play, which is one of the best museums for kids. For those in Dorchester, if you have children, you come, a gorgeous hotel right next to it. You can spend an entire day in there, and it's unimaginable. It's also a toy hall of fame, so we can go back to whatever age you're at. You'll find something you love. We have beaches, but on Lake Ontario. But I want to also pitch the region. The Finger Lakes region is gorgeous. I just came back from Portugal. I spent 10 days in Portugal along the Douro River, which is a huge wine region, wine and olive trees. But the Finger Lakes, you have all these lakes, we have 6 altogether. You have wineries, breweries, distilleries, gorgeous vistas. You can drive, you can be downtown Rochester having a meal, and you can, within 45 minutes, you're at the lakes. The region is fabulous. You can get urban dining, walk through markets, you name it. Festivals, we're a city of festivals. And every 2 weeks, there's a festival somewhere. But then going out to the Finger Lakes, we just love it. And if you're a hiker, biker, swimmer, boater, it's all around. And no different. The seaport, the water around Boston. I mean, Boston's on the water. I mean, so I think you have to love the water in Boston. You'll love the water here. We're on Lake Ontario, a little smaller than the Atlantic Ocean, but we're on Lake Ontario, not too far from Erie, and the lakes you can't beat. So
you forgot our biggest jewel in Rochester, Wegmans.
Oh, I get to that one. I went to Wegmans, and my mother walked me in. My first Wegmans at probably 4 years of age. With all due respect to Amazon and Jeff Bezos, I cannot shop in Whole Foods. I'm a Wegmans boy. I go there everywhere I go. I have family in DC. I used to have to bring things down there. Now they have one in Rockville. They're in Maryland. They're in North Carolina. I know they're in Boston.
Yep.
I've been to one in Boston. They closed one, I believe.
We've got a few. We've got one in Newton, Chestnut Hill, and some in like Dedham area. So yeah,
it's the Wegman family is one of the greatest families. They are not only great business leaders, great philanthropists. They do so much for our communities, and they're just great people. So I'm a huge Wegmans fan. And Wegmans, I say you're right. It was for the longest time a tourist stop. Anybody coming to Rochester, we had a senior golf tournament here. The PGA was here in 2023. We have Oak Hill, one of the best golf courses in the country, 52 in the world, I might add, is here. But we had a 2023 PGA here, and we had I think it was a 2021 senior PGA. And the previous champion, I had to escort to 2 places, Nick Tahoe's for a garbage plate, Wegmans for a tour. And if you go to the Wegmans flagship store, Monroe Avenue in Pittsford, if you could find a parking spot within 100 yards, God bless you. But it's the most unique place. It is. And I will say this about Wegmans. With all the national brands, I buy Wegmans brands as much as I can for one reason. I trust them. So anybody in Boston, and I would also say, I hate to say this, I apologize to a group recently. I'm reading the Bill Belichick book right now. Is that North Carolina? It's interesting so far. But the years of Tom Brady and Belichick being the Bills, it was painful.
It was painful, and now it's they're just desserts, right? It's
listen, it's turned around, but not forever, because
not forever.
Boston
will. We have to gloat while we can, Bob.
Yeah, I tell you what, every team they have is always tough. Even the Patriots had very few wins. They always played the Bills tough, and then during the Brady years, it was the opposite. And but again, it shows.
I'm nervous about Drake May, to be honest with you. He's looking pretty good.
Oh, I know. Listen, they're tough, and a new coach, Mike Vrabel, a great coach, a great player. But you know what? I love Boston. I really do, and I have great respect for it. I like the culture. Of course, I'm Irish American. Actually, my mother was born here. Everyone else came from Ireland, and I know that strong Irish connection to Boston, which I love. But that whole coast is beautiful, and I just think it's a great city, a great region, and they should be very proud. And whatever the decision is made for this stadium, I'm sure it'll be a good one.
Well, thank you so much. Really enjoy your perspective and taking the time to chat with us about your experience with stadium projects. Thanks a lot, Bob.
My pleasure. And the last thing I'll say is, go Bills.
I'm with you. Go Bills.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Goodbye. DotLife is supported by The Record Company, Boston's leading provider of accessible music creation spaces. The Record Company is addressing the critical shortage of affordable creative space in our city, serving over 4,000 monthly users across 131 communities. They've preserved 47,000 square feet of professional studio and rehearsal space at rates 60 to 90% below market value, ensuring Boston's musicians have a place to create, regardless of economic means. But they're more than just affordable space. They're building career pathways through partnerships with Bunker Hill Community College, offering professional certification programs that lead to sustainable music careers. This vital work is at risk. As creative spaces continue to disappear across Boston, the Record Company needs community support to maintain these essential resources. Their Amplify Boston campaign directly funds space preservation and career development programs. Visit therecordcompany.org today. That's therecordco.org to donate, become a monthly supporter, or learn about partnership opportunities. Every contribution helps keep Boston's music ecosystem thriving. The Record Company, creating accessible pathways to music creation since 2010. Welcome to this week's Tiny Dot Concert. I'm joined today by Troy Caruana. Hello, Troy.
Hey there.
Thanks for coming in today.
Glad to be here. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, you made the trip in from Brighton.
Yeah, this time of day, like no traffic, so it was great.
Awesome. It was really, really awesome to have you. I want to talk a bit about your music, but before we get into that, let's discuss you. You're not a Boston native. You are actually a Buffalo native.
That's right.
Heck yes.
Go Bills.
Astute listeners of this pod know that Troy and I bonded very quickly over the Bills and the Sabres, but we won't talk about that. But what brought you to Boston?
Well, most recently, so I had been living in Southern Rhode Island, but my wife got a job at the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Oh,
and then...
Wait, you didn't mention that. What does she do there?
Yeah, well, she's not there anymore. She was there about a year and a half.
Okay.
She recently got a job at AMC, Appalachian Mountain Club.
Okay.
But we were living down there in a really kind of awesome rural spot, and then she got the job. She was commuting for a bit, but it was like a 2-hour commute. Yeah. It's like we gotta move, so we got a really nice spot up on Chestnut Hill area.
Buffalo as a child.
Yep.
Then you did a brief stint, as most people do, in West Africa.
Of course.
Tell us a little bit about your West Africa experience.
Yeah, so I graduated from Buff State, and then at the time I thought I wanted to get my PhD in philosophy. I was really set on that for a couple of years, but then I realized it's just not the best course of action. And it was ultimately like my second kind of goal for a while had been going overseas and spending time there. So I was able to do a Peace Corps, where I was teaching, overseeing our gender and youth development programs over there. And so I was in Benin, West Africa for about 3 years, about halfway up the country in a little village called Wesse. And yeah, it was just absolutely awesome.
Who's your favorite philosopher?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't know that I have, well, maybe Camus, I think, had the biggest impact on me, even though he's not, he's in more the existentialist tradition. Right. Other than that, I was really interested in the, John Rawls, Robert Nozick debate for a while. Just that dialogue was fascinating.
You lost me after Camus, but it's okay. So you were in Benin. You started performing before then, or I know you did some performing in Benin.
Yeah, and that was mostly for just for my own passing time and getting to know people. Music is always a great way to connect, build community, meet people, and so it was really helpful for that. But I have been playing guitar more or less since I was about 15 or 16. My uncle Max actually is really what got me into it. Every summer or so, I'd come down and I'd live in Rhode Island for it started off as 3 weeks, and then it all of a sudden became 3 months over a couple of years. But I think it was in 8th grade when he showed me how to play an E chord. And then I got home and just went down the rabbit hole and was probably playing for like 2-3 hours a day, just learning scales and playing chords and just, driving my parents crazy.
Nice. And I don't want to give it away. If people haven't figured it out, you do play country music. I don't know if the hat might have.
Now it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. How did you get into country?
I've always kind of been into it. I think back when I first started, I was more into the jam band lineage, so Fish, Grateful Dead, Widespread Panic, stuff like that. Mo, another great band from Buffalo, they did an awesome set at Bonnaroo. I think they played from midnight till 7 a.m. It was wild.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
were you there? You were at Bonnaroo?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was great. It was wild. But the country has always been there. I remember riding up to the Red Sox game with my grandpa from Rhode Island, blasting Alabama, Willie Nelson. But it was actually really when I went to Benin that I just really embraced it, like the George Jones. We didn't have internet at our disposal per se, so I was just in kind of a pretty modest living situation, just going nuts about Buck Owens, George Jones, and 24/7 had them on. And that's when all those, just the desire to play guitar like that and really internalizing those melodies, it was kind of nostalgic for me.
And you did play some performances for the locals in Benin, but they are not necessarily English speakers, right? With the language there is French?
Yep.
So how did that go over? Yeah,
and Benin, it's interesting. There's actually a little over 50 distinct languages in the country, and it's only the size of, I think, Pennsylvania or Ohio.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of indigenous languages. They spoke Fon in my village, and so that's largely what I was speaking, also French. I was telling you earlier, it was kind of great because, for me, remembering words can be pretty frustrating and takes a lot of effort, and I didn't even need to worry much about it. I just if I didn't know the second verse, I would just make it up.
Do it again.
If I didn't know the first verse, I would make it up. And no one there to call me out on it. So
did they enjoy the music?
What's funny? It was hit and miss. Other musicians really enjoyed it. But the music over there, like I'm really into Afro beats too, like Davido, Ashake. Like there's a lot of really great music coming, especially from Nigeria in that area. But it all is a groove, and you can dance to it. And over there, the function of music is largely to dance. It almost has a different function. So I think I actually bored a lot of people. Some of my neighbors were like, well, what are we supposed to do with this?
Right.
How do we dance to this?
Put them to sleep.
Right. This is John Prine. I can't do much dancing to this.
So you came back, you perform now publicly. You do some, I think, primarily covers, but you're starting to get into your own original writing and performing. Talk about what you're going to play for us today and which of those are covers, and you have one at the end. I think that's going to be your own composition. Yeah,
so largely in Boston, it's been just getting to know people, kind of getting out there. But a lot of what I'm doing now is more so session work. I'm playing with guys like Corey Daniel. I've played with Nick Bossy a lot in southern Rhode Island, Connecticut area. playing with Ward Hayden and the Outliers coming up at the Knickerbocker. I'm filling in for them. So it's been kind of an on-call basis. Studio work the same, but it's increasingly trying to do more of the solo performance stuff, get comfortable with that, and jump into the songwriting.
And how have you enjoyed doing the songwriting side of things?
I don't think it's my preferred means of kind of expression. For me, I've really been into the pedal steel lately.
Okay.
And that to me is like, it's captivating. Like I think I played for 6 hours last night. I sit down at 6 o'clock and then all of a sudden it's midnight. It's captivating, just how complex and the sound of it. So I think I'm more drawn to the instrument, the music theory, and that part. But it's been cool. And like everything, songwriting, it's a muscle you kind of got to work on. So I've been trying to get better at that.
So today you're going to play for us 2 are covers, one by John Prine, one by, you said, George Jones.
Yep.
And then you're going to do the third one is more of a bluegrass tune.
Yep.
Talk about that one a bit.
Osborne Brothers. I've been playing that one for a while, listening to the rain. It may be a traditional tune, but the version I'm most familiar with is Osborne Brothers. So
cool. And then you're going to wrap with your own piece.
Yep. Yeah, it's an original I wrote down in Nashville. I was doing some recording down there with an artist, Liz Spencer, and producer Tim Quick, and sat down and kind of put that together.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear it.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy.
Troy Caruana here. Got a John Prine song coming for you. This is this is one that I recorded and put up on Spotify recently. It's the first song I ended up doing as a solo artist. So here it goes.
Come home late and you come home early. You come home big when you're feeling small. You come home straight and you come home curly. Sometimes you don't come home at all. What in the world's come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. I got a heart that burns with a fever. I got a worried and a jealous mind. I can't a love that could last forever. Get left so far behind. What in the world's come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. Mighty mean and a dreadful sorrow has crossed the evil line today. How can you ask about tomorrow? We ain't got one word to say. What in the world's come over you? What in heaven's name have you done? Broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. You're out there running just to be on the run. You're out there running just to be on the run.
So here we go. I got a George Jones song for you. It's one I added to the set recently and one of my personal favorites. It's called She Thinks I Still Care. Just because I asked a friend about her, just because I spoke her name somewhere, just because I rang her number by mistake today, she thinks I still do. And just because I haunt the same old places, memories of her linger everywhere. Just because I'm not the happy guy I used to be, she thinks I still do. Oh, if she's happy thinking I still need her, let that silly notion bring her cheer. Oh, how could she ever be so foolish? Oh, where would she get such an idea? Just because I asked a friend about, just because I spoke her name somewhere, just because I saw her then went all to pieces, she thinks I still care. This next one is it's a bluegrass tune called "Listening to the Rain." I've been playing this one for a while now, and just another one of my favorites. I'm looking out the window at the rain tonight. It's driving me crazy. It's just as cold inside, and all the warmth is gone without my baby. In my mind something stirs, and my lips start crying out your name. I'm sitting here wondering where you are, and I'm listening to the rain. The beating on the window can't compare with the beating that I'm taking. The window's gone home, but look at me, I'm already breaking. Memories poking at my heart, and they're gonna break beneath the strain. But I'm sitting here wondering where you are, and I'm listening to the rain. Got you pictured in the arms and in the heart of some new love. I try to block it out, but all my mind can see swimming you love. Knowing that it might be true, that's the thing that's causing all my pain. I'm sitting here wondering where you are, and I'm listening to the rain. I'm sitting here wondering where you are, and
I'm listening to the rain. All right, so this one here is an original tune. I wrote it back around the COVID era, right? I was down in Nashville recording with an artist, Liz Spencer. So I took this kind of unfinished idea to the group after we were done. We were just doing some songwriting on the couch with our producer, Tim Quick, and threw some words down to it. So we'll see how this goes. Down a dirt road, I've lived in the sky. Found my days away, and I've sailed through the night. Ain't found a place that's too far to go. Keep on moving, that's what I know. Had my share of love and had my loss. Devil's on my shoulder as he carries a cross. Ain't found a place for my roots to grow. I keep on moving, that's what I know. Know you've been waiting for me to settle down. Know you've been hoping that I'll stick around. Can't build love on such shaky ground. It's hard for me to go. I keep on moving, that's what I know. Know you've been waiting for me to settle down. Know you've been hoping that I'll stick around. Can't build love on such shaky ground. It's hard for me to go. I keep on moving, that's what I know. Make it hard for me to go. I keep on moving, that's what I know. Cool.
Thank you for listening to DotLife, which is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. DotLife is produced and edited by me, Erin Caldwell. Technical support is provided by Yasser Mahmoud and John Forry. Additional support is provided by the Dorchester Reporter and the Record Company. Thanks to Mike Omenazu, Robert Duffy, Bill Forry, and Troy Caruana for joining this week's show. We would love it if you could share, subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, visit dotlifepod.com for more information.